Okay, so week 3 is done. Week 4 is heading at us, and I want to give you some feedback just generally, right? I'm not going to point out anyone specific. Some things I saw in code this week that I think it's just good to discuss. And as I go over the code, I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you before you see the answer, did you know the answer? Okay? And what I want you to do in your reply is tell me if you did. Okay. So before I jump into that, one thing I'm going to show you too is how I run my local environment and tell you you don't have to do this, but you can sure. I run a local server on my system because I like the ability to do what's called hot reload or just live. They call it live server. It's actually an extension that whenever you change your JavaScript code, sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the time it just changes what is in your, and this could be true for HTML as well. So I'm going to show you that, but more than anything, again, in your reply is what I'm looking for, because I'm going to cover 4, if I can get to it, at least 3 different things that I saw that is important to point out, especially for people that are new to coding, which is most of you. Okay. All right. So let me move over to my VS Code. And I've set up a new folder in the public. And I've actually done this is I've right-clicked and I've said open in my integrated terminal. That's one of the first things that I always do. You can absolutely do change directory and do it navigating that way, totally fine. And now what I could do is if I wanted to just open the HTML, I could just say reveal, in my case in Finder. You could do this in your file manager. It'd be fine. The thing you have to remember there is that you have to reload it each time you change something. So that's why I have done prior to this, I've had it on my system for a while. It's called npm I for install, and then it's live server. Now, this actually does an install. Just let me say this. If you ever take my Node.js class, we talk about setting up environments and where it installs different libraries into that environment in a virtualized way. But in this case, we're installing this in your entire system. So it's not required. So that's what I do. And now what that gives me is the ability just to run live server. But I will say the other thing you can do is in VS Code is just go search for live server, and you will find that there is a lot of different ones, and you can look around. And how I evaluate an extension, because I'm adding something into my browser, is I look at how many people have installed it, okay? But what's interesting here, because remember, these are generally just individuals who do this, and it says, I'm super busy now, and if you want to be the maintainer of this project, please help. Which, by the way, let me just say, helping on open source projects is a great way to get experience, okay? So do that if you want. You can load this, you can enable it, but I'm just going to tell you, that's how I run my system. So I'm going to go ahead and run live. Did I open the right directory? Feedback. Oh, I did. Feedback week 3. Okay. So then I just run live server. And then what happens here is now that I'm in here, if I right click and I hit inspect, okay, I'm just going to refresh real quick. I'm going to hit sources, right? And I'm going to go to app. There's nothing in here right now but a few comments. Okay. Again, and setup, you do it however you want. I've given you a couple options. Ask me if you want, but again, what I want in this video is you to answer a question. So let's say I set up, and you can do const, right? And you see me doing that. You can also do let is the way you're going to declare your variables. But I'm going to say add to. I don't know what this is going to do, right? Oh, my keyboard has been so funky. It's going to be a function, right? I'm going to pass in input. And in here, I'm going to say num equal to 2. And then I'm going to say return num plus input. Okay? Now, we know what will happen, right? It's not the one I want you to give me. If I call add to and I pass 3 into it, We know what that's not the one. That one, by the way, should be pretty clear what that's going to do, right? If we're passing 3, we're setting a variable of 2, and then we're returning whatever you gave to me plus 2, that should be 5. But here's my question. What if I console log number? Okay, that's one of the first ones I want to see in your answer. What do you think is going to happen? Now, in order to, so note that, okay? So in this case, you shouldn't be able to console log number outside of a scope of a function. This is a locally scoped, which means whatever is declared in here should only be available in here. Now let's actually go look. It actually shows it. Okay? It shows the answer of 5, but then it console logs 2. Why is that? That is because if you assign a variable without doing the let or the const or something else, it actually makes that variable a global variable, and that's not what you want. Most of the time, that's not what you want. Remember, we're trying to move away from actually having global variable declaration unless there's an absolute need, but more than anything, you just want to know. Now, by doing this, what now happens on my console log? I get an error. All right, so that's your first one. So here's another one that I saw in our work today, and it's worth talking about, okay? So let's say I say let check setting a variable on a global space. Again, it's not what in our programming projects we'll be doing, but I'm just using it for demonstration. Let's say let amount. Now, in this case, remember, variables are camel case, so if I'm only using one word, it's lowercase. It's going to be equal to check plus 1,000. What is going to be the output of amount? Have a guess? What will it be? Okay, what will it be? Oh, didn't do it. Oh yes, sorry, that's an error. And by the way, this is good to know. So when you have an error like this, your code will stop. It will no longer, once it hits that hard error. And how do you know there's a hard error? Hard errors mean it's stopping the function of your code, right? So in this case, I actually have to either comment out this line to get my code to run. Okay, so back down here. What is going to output here? Oh, did I do so? Oh, helps when you spell it right. Right? Did you think that would happen? 600? It's actually a string output. It's not a numeric output. And maybe you guessed that that's true. But would that also be true if we did this? The answer is no. And this is one of the reasons people get frustrated with JavaScript, okay? Because what happens is, depending on the operator you're using, there may be something called coercion. Coercion is when JavaScript evaluates a statement and it says, I see, and when it sees an add, it's like, oh, I'm going to concatenate. The first one's a string. I'm just going to concatenate those together. But when it sees multiply, it's like, oh, no, you want to multiply, so I'm going to coerce. I'm going to change the value to a integer so that you can use that. So be careful. Don't declare something a string if you're going to use it in some kind of math operation later. Okay, so here's the next one. So if I said let my pet equal cat, and then I said if my pet equal dog, we'll just keep it lowercase, and then this is a function, right? Console log got here, or let's just say console log my pet. What do you think is going to happen? What's your guess? What's your guess for what is going to show up on the console? Okay, you have a guess? right? Dog. Is that what you guessed? And if you guessed dog, why dog? Because in this case, when you do equals, it's not does it equal. It's actually doing it's doing a variable assignment. What you probably want to do, and I've covered this before in the response to somebody's code, but I think it's good to cover it again, is that when you say, is it equal, strictly equal actually does the comparison that you're looking for. Doing a single equal just does an assignment. So what do you think is going to output here? What's your guess? This is my third or fourth one. And I want to see in your reply. Doesn't do anything. Why is that? Because it does a comparison and it doesn't get here because this evaluates to false. There you go. Okay. Last one, and I won't do much of a thing on it, but when you say if, you say first statement, comma, second statement, you may think this is doing something other, and statement just means like, here's a statement, right? An expression. So in JavaScript, this does not do, it only actually evaluates the last one amazingly. So we haven't seen it in the course, and when I saw it in somebody's code this today, I was like, oh, let's be clear. If you want to say, right, and understand the difference between and or, okay, but comma is not going to do what you think. Okay. All right, let me come back here. Oh, here, and in here. All right, so in your reply, how many of those did you know before you saw the output? And it's okay, it's not a bad thing. It's just that's the way we learn is really here. And here's what we're trying to get you to do. We're trying to get you to think like JavaScript. Think like the language, because our way of thinking, unless you're evaluating it, is just so natural to you. But you're trying to express yourself through JavaScript. So understanding its rules and its syntax and its ways. And this is why some people, there's actually a course I've used called JavaScript, the Weird Parts. Coercion is in there. There's other things in there. It's because some people who come from other languages see JavaScript and they're like, oh my God, why did you do that? There's also new modern things to make this a little better. But okay, last thing I'm going to leave you with is some of you are going to see in my feedback for week 3 a comment that says, come see me. And there's reasons. The reason I say this is that some stuff in your code, I mean, I'm seeing good progress, but what you want to do is learn to talk about this code because that's where we're heading in week 6. Week 6 is that first pivotal milestone in this class where you have to come up with an idea, you have to write some code, working code, and you have to come into a code review with me. So when you come into the code review, assuming you have working code and it meets the objectives, then that's 50% of the score. The other 50% of your score comes from how well you can converse, how well you can just walk through your code using dev tools and describing it, because that's the only way I know how to evaluate if students really are learning how to do this. And I know it's a big jump, but I know you can do it. I totally know each of you can do this. So if I say come see me, it's because I sense in your code it would really be helpful, which by the way, it'd be helpful for all of us, because the one thing this remote system doesn't give us is that ability. But I'm guessing the reason I'm not seeing more of you is that you're working at the due date. So even if you're working at the due date, still come see me, because you're going to benefit from talking about that code. All right, my advertisement is over. Have a great day. Enjoy it.